Good morning, good evening, everybody. This is Mohammed Sharmas, president of GBA UAE, and Misha Hanin, who's a GBA UAE ambassador. And greetings from this beautiful city of Dubai. Today, we're going to talk about exciting world of DAOs and various DAO projects our guests are doing. So, I'm going to ask a question today. But before I ask a question, I'm going to introduce about GBA. GBA stands for Government Blockchain Association UAE, and our mission is to help adopt blockchain technologies in the government sector, and we do that through three ways: through education, advocacy, and innovation. We have specialized blockchain courses, for example, in cybersecurity, in blockchain healthcare, and we have exciting working groups. For example, me and Max Gravitt are members of DAO working group, where we discuss about various developments going on in the blockchain world. And we also help in innovation. We innovate in house. We make, for example, we are making a DAO so we could effectively coordinate between different chapters around the world. One small disclaimer: government blockchain is not affiliated with any government or private entity, and GBA does not endorse any projects. All information in session should not be construed as legal, financial, or investment advice, and should be used only for educational purpose. So, with that, I'm going to ask a question. What's a common thing between France, IBM, and PETA? The common theme between them is with a nation, a company, a nonprofit is their organizations. Organizations formed by humans to coordinate efforts to achieve certain goals. Humans are social animals, and our collective cooperation has helped us survive worst environmental and external threats. We are not physically stronger compared to other species, but our collective effort has helped us survive and overcome harsh environments. Before agriculture was invented, we were hunter and gatherers for over 200,000 years, where we used to forage for foods. So we didn't have place to store foods. We were nomadic, and we had to constantly move. That's the reason the population was kept small and life was less complex. But with the invention of agriculture around 10,000 years ago, we settled down in a single place and we got more time to procreate, and that caused increase in population size, and then we started specializing. As population grew, people specializing like blacksmith to farmer to different sectors, and then we grouped up. We formed different different structures. One of the most common structures is hierarchical structure, like monarchy. And with the specialization, it led to the birth and dawn of civilization. And as you know, if around 4 or 5 thousand years ago, some of the earliest civilization in the Bronze Age were near near the rivers, where it was very fertile, like for example Harappa culture or Egyptian or Mesopotamian civilization. Um, so let me continue. Continuing that, this is something called complexity profile. A complexity profile shows certain aspects of relationship between the behavior of the individual of an organization and collective behavior of entire organization. By complexity, we mean how much social, economic, or environmental political impact an individual or an organization can have around them. If you notice in the graph, we have initially we had a simple life during the hunter and gatherer life. Like it was a bit fragmented. There were like one leader for like say 10 people. Life was really simple. We used simple tools, so we didn't have much impact on the environment. But with the invention of agriculture, the early civilizations, then their hierarchy started forming. Like we elected a king, where who taxed and in return protected the people. Uh, and here's the one something I want to take on about the hierarchical structure. The hierarchical structure works when when the what do you call the individuals there do simple tasks, and when they do something like coherent tasks and not complex tasks, it's good. The reason why is that so as number of people increases, there's a limitation on there's some constraints on the top management or the top person to take in information because it's they have some limitations in understanding, and also there's some limitation in social relationships like Dunbar's number. So like Dunbar's number is it basically it tells how many meaningful relationship a person can have, and usually it's between 150 to 250 people. And as the number of people in an organization increases, people become less engaged and become like and the organization as a result becomes less agile. So one main thing in this whole evening, one of the main problems with the hierarchical organization is that when the complexity of the whole organization increases beyond that of an individual leading the hierarchy, uh, then hierarchical controls become ineffective. There are bottlenecks in the cognitive and social ability of the management of the top. So, so hierarchical control system must yield to some newer systems like hybrid systems, which thanks to internet, you know, uh, people have become, it's become easier to overcome the top management, and basically connect to over, I mean, uh, by overcoming the middle layer management. But still, most of the decisions are made by top management. We have to come with new organizational management like network, which we call network, flat, or decentralized organized structure. There are many names for it, like there's holocracy or flat organization, decentralized management, which has been formed. And one of the management political system is we found was democracy. So democracy was formed so that one person cannot have too much power. It's basically you elect a representative government to make decisions for you. But some of the problems uh, with the democracy is that it takes time to make decisions. It takes time to coordinate, and for example, a parliament session can cost a lot of money. Parliament session, say for example, in places where there's democracy or even republic, like states in Capitol Hill. For example, in India, per minute it costs like $4,000 to hold a session. And during COVID-19, they didn't have the session, but still they are taking salaries, so from the taxpayers. Zoom can only do so much, and they're looking for a new technology where they could effectively coordinate uh, in a flat organization, so it can reduce the cost of collaboration. So one of the technologies they're looking to help improve coordination, overcome bottlenecks is blockchain. What is blockchain? Blockchain is basically a decentralized database, which is mutable, hard to change. It's transparent, so participants can see the data and you can trace the data. All this enables trust. So trust, initially you should trust a person or an organization, which are basically governed by humans, which are subjective. So, so the point I'm trying to make is that once you transfer trust from a person to a system, you can scale trust. And the reason you can scale trust is is trust trumps time, trust trumps price. You know, when you trust person or entity, it reduces the cost. You know, the time, the sales cycle, or anything. So you can apply this to any sector. So today we are going to talk about DAOs. A DAO is basically codifies the rules of an organization in a blockchain. Thus, it improves the coordination and collaboration between members working towards a common community goal. Just to let you know, Bitcoin was one of the first DAO, and there are many advantages of having DAO. Some of them are it incentivizes the participants. So those people who like join a DAO, okay, they have to either give something, or some DAOs are open, some DAOs are vetted, you know, closed. But you get rewarded for your efforts. The second thing is transparency. All the members can see who voted, you know, how much they paid, you know, for what issues they voted. And third thing, there's skin in the game. If you basically pay for your decision, if you make wrong decision, you lose. If you make right decision, you win. So there's skin in the game. One other thing, it reduces Moloch problem. What is a Moloch problem? If you remember, if for example, if you form a team of say 5 members, uh, these you see during working on a project, 3 of them disappear, and then you two work your, you know, ass off day and night, and during the end, you know, during the reward ceremony or toward the end, the 3 show back up, you know, and they take the credit of the whole project. So Moloch is basically prevents few people who take advantage, or no, few people who do the work but benefits the whole organization. So the DAO ensures that those people who put in work get rewarded because things are transparent. And one of the main things DAO helps is it reduces the cost of coordination. So DAO reduces the cost of creating or managing organizations by replacing slow and expensive paper contracts with fast and cheaper smart contracts. What are smart contracts? Smart contracts are basically codes in the blockchain. They're simply computer programs. They execute predefined actions when certain conditions are met. So with the lower costs and higher speeds, we can unlock new levels of organization scale, which helps reduce and eliminates middle layer management, thus reducing costs and increasing the profits. So in short, DAOs are the next big innovation after, say, social media, which is Web 2.0. Web 1.0 allowed everyone to share ideas. Web 2.0 allowed communities to form and discuss those ideas. And Web 3.0 will enable those communities to leverage financial capital. You can have a say on where your money goes, and you can go from discussion to tangible action. You can coordinate where the money goes so you can achieve the common community goals. So in short, DAO is the next frontier of human coordination. Today we have 3 exciting guests going to talk about the DAO projects. The first is Max Gravitt. He is a part of GBA Global, and we are together a part of working group, DAO working group. He's also a founder of Digital Scarcity. He has more than 20 years experience in technology field, and over the years he worked for leading companies like Intel, Skullcandy, and OpenCrowd. So we're going to talk about the DAO GBA is going to launch, which have been working for months. Our second esteemed guest is Antonio Carlos. He's the CEO of Blockchain Research Institute of Brazil chapter, and he started one of the first Brazilian autonomous DAO. He also launched the first public crypto asset offering in Brazil. Today he's going to talk about one of the projects he's going to talk about distributed autonomous engineering DAO, whose objective is to create wealth for engineers while reducing costs for infrastructure projects for government and investors. Now, third one is the topic I'm really passionate about: use of blockchain in politics. And Bill, our third guest is Bill Warren. He's a law school graduate. and he's a co-founder of Peeps Democracy. Today, we're going to talk about Depot DAO, which encourages open source projects in political sector and which can help break down the political barriers. So, good morning, good evening, gentlemen, and the agenda today is 15 minutes presentation, and then we're going to have a panel discussion, then Q&A from the audience. So I will let Max to present first. So over to you, Max.
Great, thank you. Let me just share my screen here. Let me know if you guys are able to see this. See
yes.
The screen? Great, perfect. Well, thank you so much for the introduction and for hosting this event. I thought that was a great introduction. I'm super excited about hearing the other speakers and all the great questions as well. So yes, as mentioned, I am Max Gravitt, the head of the governance DAO working group for the GBA. And I've also developed, a number of DAOs over the past year and a half to 2.5 years. And the GBA is building on a lot of that same technology that I've been working on over that time period. So I'm going to talk a little bit about what we're doing with GBA, but also what I'm doing with Haifa, which is the DAO that is the open source technology that we're reusing for the GBA. And it's also available for anyone else who's interested in starting their own DAO as well, that's also one of the goals that we have for the working group, is to create a toolkit that makes it easy for groups that want to launch their own DAO to have those capabilities. So this is a little bit about the technology stack. I won't talk much about technology, but it's built using EOSIO, which is a 3rd or 4th generation blockchain technology. It's super fast, particularly relative to Ethereum. It's delegated proof of stake, which makes it, which means you don't have transaction fees, among other things. But for some of those reasons and other reasons, make it a great technology platform for DAOs and really reaching a mainstream user because it doesn't require, connecting to exchanges to get Ether and sort of all of these more esoteric steps that other blockchains require. And we are using a blockchain network called Telos, which uses the EOSIO underlying technology. And it's, if you've heard of EOS as a public network, it's, this very similar to that, except it's incredibly much more affordable, and it has been customized specifically for governance. It's its specialty. And we've developed, we being a legion of folks, not just the GBA or not just the Digital Scarcity, my company, but a large community of folks have been developing this tech stack as well as this SDK for launching DAOs. And I'll talk a little bit more about this, but all of this is available. Please email me if you're interested in either getting started or just getting access to the repositories. So Haifa DAO, I'll tell you a little bit about this background. This is, as mentioned in the introduction, holacracy. So Haifa uses holacracy as its guiding governance, which I'm not a guru on. I only learned about as I started working on this project, but it's infrastructure for managing shared work and activities through roles and circles, and less hierarchical. So I some more visuals here. We're also developing this toolkit that integrates with really the best of breed of different other tools like Telegram for chat tools, or Discord or LinkedIn. And so it's really a dashboard that connects you into all of these different environments, but then layers in all of the governance and voting and compensation on top of those existing tools. And some of our goals, really as part of the goal of holacracy, is to balance resilience, which is how we've defined are all the decisions aligned, meaning we don't have groups over here making decisions that are just completely off, out of sync with decisions that may be being made in a different area of the organization, which sometimes happens. And scalability is the other vector. Scalability meaning how large can the community grow? Can we process all of the decisions that need to be made and continue to grow and create more organizations and create more value. So this is a little bit of an idea of the circle. It's a hierarchy of circles, but each of the decisions really gets pushed to the edges. So there's no single party CEO that's in control of all the decisions, but all of the circles themselves are given budgets and resources. And within those, it's almost like a DAO within a DAO. They're able to vote on proposals and manage resources and activities within their circle. And then if something is outside the scope of that circle, meaning it requires more resources, then it's very clear process to go back to the, to the parent circle and eventually out to the entire organization. And there's also, there's a nice functionality that we're implementing that is what we call a sensing circle, which is a circle focused on integrating the various other activities of the DAO. So it includes members from the other circles. So a little bit about, that's a little bit about the holacracy framework that we're using for Haifa, and that will also be available for use within the GBA. This is a much less attractive chart that I created to show the flow of how revenue or donations for the organizations flow through and get voted on by the members. So all of the inbound funds or tokens, which could be Bitcoin or any token, come into a treasury, a multi-sig treasury, and then voting and proposal functionality are used to make decisions on how those resources are shared across the different circles, the roles within the circle, where a role would be, like a job description. And an assignment would be a certain person inside of a job or inside of a role for a certain amount of period of time to achieve certain results. And then we also have this concept of challenges and quests, which are, like bounties or, specific activities that if you complete, write a white paper or develop some functionality or host a meetup, some like a one-time event that you can do to earn tokens. And all of this is sort of organized in the effort to implement the shared mission, the shared goal of the DAO. So I have a few examples of how this looks in the user interface. This is the web application, and this is the Haifa skin, although the GBA instance looks very similar. I'll show that in just a second. In the back right here is the members page, where you see each one of the avatars. You can view information about that person, public information about their profile. They can share private contact information and things like that as well. And over here on the left-hand side are roles that can be applied for. So these are roles that are approved and budgeted, that were approved and budgeted via a decentralized voting process, and members can come in and apply for. And then when they apply for this role, the salary is part of the role, but inside the bounds of that, the applicant can decide how they want to receive the tokens. And this gets a little complex. I won't spend a lot of time on it, but I just wanted to showcase a little bit of how flexible this can be is that this particular assignment, this was for, I think, a content creator or something like that. So someone who was going to write marketing materials or Medium articles, things like that. And they could committed 50% of their time. So like 20 hours per week. They're going to take 80% of the compensation as deferred compensation. So by taking it as deferred, there's some policies around when the tokens become active based on the tokenomics of this particular organization. But if you defer it to a certain point, you actually receive the tokens right away, but they can't be redeemed until a go live event has been approved by the community. And then you get additional quantities. So that's kind of what the deferred versus liquid is. And then there's also a USD component. So while a lot of these are tokens, a lot of the people that are contributing have bills to pay, of course, to rent and groceries and things like that. And so, they're requesting a certain component out of that in USD. So they can configure this, and all of these variables get updated. These are sort of the token quantities that are going to get issued each week for this assignment. They save that, and then that gets voted on. And when it's approved by the organization or by that circle, the user can come in. It's sort of like a self-directed payroll portal, so to speak. They can come in and claim, that they worked for these months or these cycles. And I'll quickly go through what it looks like for the GBA, which we're not launched yet, but we're working on launching very soon. I think pretty much all the tech is ready. We're just crossing a few T's and dotting a few I's. But this is what it looks like. It's a drastically simplified version where we don't have roles and assignments, but it's just proposals. And what a proposal is I can come out here, for example, on this one, I said, I've authored an article on GBA initiatives. I type in that as the activity. I can put in a URL, and then I have entered these tokens. And so here I put in one voting token, which is how voting power, voting influence is distributed, and reward tokens, where reward tokens don't map to your voting power. They're just they're just rewards for performing the work. And then here's what the life cycle looks like for GBA. This was in the test environment, but it's all, besides one bug out here, it's fully operational. The first step here, Doris, this test user, created the proposal, then she proposes it, and then it sits out there for a period of time, 1 week, but that can be configured, and where it gets voted on by users. And then after the week passes, if it receives enough votes, which for this particular configuration is you need 20% quorum and 80% of the voters to have approved that proposal, although those are highly configurable, proposal by proposal. But then after the week, then she activates it. And this here is on the right-hand side is from the blockchain block explorer that shows how Doris was issued the tokens, the reward tokens and the voting tokens that were put into the proposal. And then the next time that she goes to vote on a proposal, either hers or someone else's, then her updated voting token balance or voting power, would be used and applied to those proposals. That's all I have. Just wanted to share a little bit about kind of what we're doing there with a few screenshots and teasers about what's coming soon for GBA, and I look forward to your questions.
Thanks, Max.
Can you please share your screen?
I'm doing it right now.
Yeah, I can see you.
Okay. I would I'll give a little more conceptual presentation and talking about our project for distributed engineering, as it came through the same methodology that we create here in Brazil. We have the experience on network business, so we began in 2006 working on social networking for some value chain that we have here in Brazil, like aeronautic industry, food, packaging, shoes, and several industry segments. And then we came always finding some barriers on building large networks or decentralized or distributed organizations, which in 2006 we discovered blockchain, and then we start prototyping. In 2016 we discovered blockchain and start prototyping with our organization. Our main problem was revenue and information flow, that centralized organizations could manage bigger values, and distributed organizations does not. We cannot articulate 10,000 people or 20,000 people and keep the system scalable. It fails on the bureaucracy and on the money flow, taxes. And in 2016, we worked with Don Tapscott at the PRI, and on blockchain revolutions, it talks about the decentralized autonomous enterprise, talking about an entity that could run in minimal management structure, works according to specific rules and procedures, and technology providers will set a software agenda and build a distributed or decentralized application that companies will run over technology. And I'm not a technology guy. I'm more a people, a person guy. So we found that companies that are driven only by technology, there are only two examples that are well known all around the world, that it doesn't end very well for humans. So we try to put some humans on our equation and let the technology behind. So in 2016, we came up with the principles of what we call at that time the prosperous organization, as the DAO acronyms was not used at that time. We had, after we published this paper, saw the rising of the DAO, which a couple of weeks later, we saw their downfall. So what we did is we create 4 autonomous organizations, one for trading crypto assets, one, it was a publishing house who published the Blockchain Revolution book here in Brazil. We experimented with remote working with virtual assistants, which we could mobilize like 5,000 people. And we start working with handcraft food and beverages, beer almost, and we start giving some ways to production for people who want to experiment producing their own recipes and try new careers on the food industry. What we saw that on a big part of the people who are on those organizations are the same people who are experimental in new ways of working outside the corporation. So a couple of months after we create all those companies, we make a fusion and we consolidate everything in what we call an organization on the abundant model called Prospera, and we have issued a token called the Prosper, which is the first ICO in Brazil and one of the first to start paying dividends and sharing revenue a couple of months after we have issued and distributed it for our network. The values are smaller than what we saw in the market, but they were real, and we have distributed at least the same amount of money that people have invested on their creation. what we decided to do is we changed the model of the organization, which is based on scarcity and competition, to a model on a new paradigm, which we call the abundance paradigm, which is based on collaboration and based on value creation through articulating a new form of organization. We studied holacracy, we studied the tier organizations, and overall those theory and the commons theory came up, we came up with this model. So we are beginning from the principle that there is enough resources for everyone. So that's why believing on that, we stop making stocks and competing for stock and start collaborating to create wealth for everybody. So as we do that, we increase the offer of products and services. And doing this, we lower the price and we include more people on the economic circle. So doing that, we prove that there is enough for everybody. And so collaboration began as a rule for thriving on this environment and not for something that we have to enforce or stimulate. It was a natural thing that came on those organizations. And what we decided is it's not a matter of center. Topologies are not mutually exclusive. So what we see on the discussion when we talk about DAOs is when you talk about a distributed topology, you believe that is more time consuming, it's more difficult to materialize products and services, more difficult to produce something on a centralized way, that on a centralized and more organized way. And what we believe, and this has a little to in connection with the law of the accelerated returns from Raymond Kurzweil on Singularity University, is that we have moments that we came from a distributed topology of organization that becomes to cut some ties, some weak ties to materialize something. And when you need to materialize a product, you start forming teams. And after you're forming teams, you need to go down to the task and you need to centralize the task on a leader or someone who will be the responsible for delivering that specific task. And so we have something like that, which is a pulsating form of organization. When you have to materialize something, you go from distributed to centralized, and then you come back and you return on a permanent feedback cycle that will become exponentially, and will make the organization to grow, and at the same time it will benefits from the topology, the distributed topology that brings more idea, more innovation, more exponentiality. It also will benefit from the centralization of the process when it has deliverables to present. So now we then get an extending vision of the company. And I believe that but we need to go from the efficiency and the reduction of the transaction costs, which is an innovation barrier, to effectiveness vision, which is a model that will open the field of possibilities with inclusion, diversity, with that will bring exponentiality and abundance. So, and I guess I lost the slide here, but we say that doing that, we have a vision that goes for prosperity. So doing this, we came with some principles that we regard kind of business model that we are looking at, how the financial management will be done, how the leadership and governance process, how budgeting and planning are done, and how hierarchy will be seen. So in a resume, because this is a 1.5 hour speech, we just have 15 minutes. The business model, we go from do things right for the do the right things right. So we have to look at what has to be done with these market conditions, and then we have to be effective on doing that. We have to look outside and inside the company. The hierarchy goes for vertical and centralized for a more horizontal hierarchy. We're talking about no top-down assigned leadership, but self-assumed and self-declared leadership on the task level. From voting process for consensus building, but not for the unanimity building, but some sort of middle ground between excluding processing voting process that could approve a project for a small margin of 49 to 51%, or something that the whole company or the whole organization can live and work for it. The planning, which is top-down task assignment based on alignments on the central vision of the CEO, which is a substitute for the command and control chain for a planning and objective and goals chain, for something what we call the synchronization on the present, what we are now, where we are now, what we need to do, and who's going to be volunteered to do or to lead that process. We experimented on budgeting, going from the centralized budget for the distribute budget, and we did not distribute votes, we distribute money. So when all the revenue is distributed to the members of the network, and they will crowdfund the projects, not with vote, but with real money, actual, in what we call the distributed savings account, which the organization have that money on their hands to put on the projects they want to finance or they want to work with. And all the financial management goes directly to blockchain, to be transparent, inclusive, abundant, and cost-effective. And how do we begin that? We began with three concepts. The first concept is we have the DAOs commons, which is all the assets that the organization have, plus the collective action from the network. Then everybody has the same hierarchical level, which everybody is a node on the organization, and we don't have any kind of standardized position or job descriptions. Everybody can actually do whatever they want to by limited only by the reputation of doing things or learning, interacting, building knowledge, and task completing. And we have the objects, which are the products and services that will be developed on this organization. For what we call, in this, we can show using just as a reference the value chain of Michael Porter's. The object will be the major activities or the principal activities on the organization, the yellow ones, logistics, operations, marketing, and services. The nodes will be the ecosystems, and the commons are the capital, the structural capital, the social capital, the intellectual capital, and the financial capital that the organization needs. In our case, here in BRI, we call the commons the knowledge, the technology, the platform, the white papers, the marketing, the communication, the brand, everything that we can provide for our nodes to build their business. And everybody can contribute to build the commons or to publishing a book, to use this book on an educational platform, to sell international experiencing, consulting projects, organizing events, and be rewarded for that and be paid for that. And the only thing we need is to show up and interact with the the initiators of this process and to participate fulfilling some tasks. And all the tasks are measured and the participation is calculated over this measurement. In the engineering project that was ordered for us, the idea is you have a commons of projects and service of engineering, and everybody who needs that for infrastructure will hire those projects and use them. In Brazil, we have a serious lack of infrastructure projects now. We have several economic crises, and all the technical departments have been dismantled by the city administration and state. So we have a huge lack of this, and we are proposing to offer a solution for that. So when you create an object, what we have is you have vectors, you have expenses, you have the commons that should be recompensated, you have the ecosystem growth that you need to bring more people in, and all the revenues should be distributed to those categories and to the participants of that. And the blockchain will be the underlying technology who will do that to bring transparency and efficiency on the process. We began that in 2016, publishing the Blockchain Revolution book with an editor who helped us on doing this collaboratively. We issue a crypto asset to finance the book rights, and then we paid all the translators, designers, and the reviewers with this token, and also gave some for the investors. And everyone is participating on the revenues that this book is generating and being more than compensated by their effort and by their investments. Doing this, this editor quit his job and opened his own publishing house, and now he's working with us on what we call the flow books, and we get these ecosystems of products, services, and small DAOs who will begin something bigger. So the interaction of flow books with the BRI, we have the BlockPub publishing house, and we have events, we have distributed education. We are now building a distributed consulting group, who is bringing a methodology from Canada, going horizontal. We have helped distributed creative group who is building art and some form of content that we can use in our projects. And we are seeing, like what Max just said, we are seeing small DAOs coming up, and inside those DAOs we have another circles, but everything is self-organized. We understand the distributed engineering is something like that. We will recreate the ecosystem for engineers, and by the time that they start working together, they will, in some sort, create some frictions between those ecosystems that we already have, and some products and services will emerge from this interaction.
Yeah, Anthony.
That's what I have to say, and here's my contacts. Someone wants to send some questions. I'm available.
And thanks for this. It's really informational. You are experienced in so many DAOs. So can Bill share his screen now?
Here,
Fantastic. You can see.
Yep.
Yeah.
Share a couple of things that might be helpful context and give more of a sense
can you
of.
Can you make it in presentation mode?
Yep.
In presentation. Yeah. Yeah. Thank you.
So yeah, I'm going to flip through a couple tabs, but I think for understanding the context of what I'm working on, it's helpful to understand kind of what a Peeps DAO is. You know, we've talked about several different kinds of DAOs built on several different kinds of networks. Peeps DAOs are built on the Ethereum network. They're based on an open source DAO framework called Moloch DAOs. Moloch doesn't really have anything to do with the grabbing attention problem that Mode talked about earlier, but was just a meme that people in the community enjoyed. And the purpose of Peeps DAOs was to really create a really simple system for individuals to coordinate funds and then deploy them towards causes or issues that they cared about. So, you know, rather than having lots of different roles and these complex distributed systems, we looked mostly at the nonprofit and political world and said, okay, how flat can we make these organizations while still allowing them to be compliant with campaign finance laws, et cetera? So we have admins that are usually representatives of the legal entity, and then members who are representatives of all of the donors and contributors to the organization. Basically, members are able to join by giving some sort of funds to the organization. Anybody can create proposals. The admins have to sponsor proposals before it can go to a vote. But then the membership, again, gets to vote on how their money, how their resources are spent towards their cause. We see this as a step towards decentralization within the nonprofit, social activism, and political space without completely departing and trying to get existing organizations or people to change their paradigm about the current system. You know, this is just a little bit more about the Peeps DAOs, but there's somewhat configurable. We set up administrative privileges. We allow people to pull compliance information, which makes it easy for existing organizations or organizations that want to be compliant with kind of government campaign finance regulations to use the platform. One of the Peeps DAOs that I'm involved in and really excited about is called Depot DAO. And the purpose of Depot DAO is to support experimentation within the kind of open government, open politics space. You know, I come from much more of the US context where we have, you know, several levels of government that all sometimes work together. These levels of governments can be structured differently. Like I live in a town where there's a town council and a mayor, and that's the governing body of the town. You know, then I live in the state where there's a bicameral legislator and a governor that runs the executive branch. And then on the national level, there's again a bicameral legislator, an executive branch, a judicial branch that all have different powers. You know, right now we're starting to see a lot of frustration with those systems and the fact that they have not been particularly responsive to the needs of people. You know, I'd posit that a lot of that in the US is due to this weird electoral college system that we designed in the 1700s and was probably necessary when communication had to be done via letters carried by horse across hundreds of miles. But now we have this beautiful thing called the internet that allows for immediate coordination. And Depot DAO wants to use those internet tools and specifically blockchain tools to encourage people to start their own kind of self-governance experiments and also work with local governments and state governments to participate in government and governance experiments. You know, we think that at some future state, maybe DAOs will replace local governments or state governments, potentially even national governments, because they'll allow people to buy in like you do to a nonprofit organization and then make decisions about how to deploy those funds for the good of the community, right? That's what governments do now. They just don't always do it particularly effectively. You know, I don't think any of our DAO platforms are either sophisticated enough or developed enough to replace government now which is why we're taking a mindset of experimentation. You know, a great example, which I wish we had thought of and been involved with, but Democracy Earth, which is another fantastic blockchain-based technology group, worked with the Colorado Democratic Caucus in their state legislature to try quadratic voting for determining legislative priorities. You know, I think that's the stage of experimentation we're at the moment. And that's where, you know, Depot DAO is hoping to get involved. The final thing I just want to show is the actual Depot DAO Peeps DAO. You know, this is the way that people can join Depot DAO. You just contribute a minimum of 10 DAI. You're given shares, and each of the members is able to vote on the initiatives that we want to fund with the collective funds that we've all contributed. And this is kind of our mechanism for giving small grants out to those who want to experiment with politics. It's incredibly flexible, but as a group and as a norm setting mechanism, we've agreed that we'll only fund proposals where the end technology is completely open source and available, because, you know, that's the other thing with technology for governments. We feel like it should be open source so that it's not a private good that becomes co-opted by a profit-seeking organization for philosophical purposes. And then also for security purposes, there's been a lot of talk about blockchain-based voting. You know, in the blockchain world, I think we've learned that open source is safest because it allows people to view your code and how transactions are processed, how the rules work, and identify security vulnerabilities so that the creators can fix them. The final kind of project that we're involved with that I want to show is called DAO House, which is another platform for launching DAOs. So like the Peeps DAO platform, DAO creation is kind of simplified into a web form. And we think kind of using simple web forms to create and interact with DAOs makes them relatively accessible. Since we're on the Ethereum blockchain, you still do have kind of the barriers of acquiring ETH to pay gas and transaction fees, and then having some sort of Web3 plugin wallet for actually sending transactions to the blockchain. So kind of just to wrap up my portion of the presentation, you know, we're focused mostly on creating DAOs for this politics and nonprofit space. We think that it's rife for different experimentation. What we've seen is different organizations have different requirements, and that we, you know, contrary to the theory that you should try and program in kind of all of these different roles and all of these different rules, allow the communities to really dictate the roles and rules and cultural norms that they want to have, and see the DAO more as just like a confirmatory mechanism. So, you know, most often social consensus is formed around proposals that want to be funded within the Telegram or Discord chat, and then somebody puts it up on the DAO for a vote. Because we don't have any quorum requirements on Peeps DAOs or Moloch DAOs broadly, it means that one person can confirm the vote by voting it through. And then if there was a lack of consensus, people can either vote it down or actually exit the community through a mechanism we call rage quitting, which is really a signal of saying, this has gone too far for me, I'm leaving this community completely. And then if a certain number of people in the community rage quit, that's kind of like the safety valve that kills proposals before they're passed and go through. And yeah, that's what we're working on. We're still at the early stages, and especially with Depot DAO, and looking to experiment as much as we can with different DAO configurations that will allow organizations and governments and political groups to figure out more kind of flat and transparent ways of coordinating.
Fantastic, fantastic, Bill. By the way, the Moloch is not just a meme. Moloch was actually God, ancient God in
Yeah,
Carthage. What,
that,
what
that's right.
happened was like before the war, they used to sacrifice. Some tribes used to sacrifice children, right?
Yeah,
And other tribes didn't used to sacrifice. So, but they used to benefit if they for the good luck. So that's the problem of Moloch.
yeah,
But I would
yeah,
really recommend to read the essay by the philosopher Stardust, who started this Moloch problem.
yeah,
I'll send an email to everybody after the session. It's a very, very good essay, and it basically helps you understand why certain things followed by West, like reduction of pollution by Paris Convention, it's not working because there are other countries polluting,
yeah.
um, so it's really helps understand the game theory of everything. But thanks for this. So we're gonna start the questions right now. The first question is basically to three of the candidates. I would start with Max. Okay, how did you get into DAO, and what fascinated about DAO?
Yeah, that's a great question.
Yeah.
So I started with, let's see, with Ethereum development. I'm a software engineer and started with Ethereum in 2016 or so, 2015. And, I just developed applications, and they all had a component of governance as something that needed to be accomplished. And just over time, we started to build these components that were like, well, this is the same across all these communities. Let's make it a product, so to speak, a standalone product in and of itself. And so we just started to build these components. And then I met a few individuals at a hackathon in early 2019 that had done a lot of work in this space and were really, visionaries on how people work well together, independent of blockchains. And so they really, I partnered up with them, and they've been leading a lot of the work on how it should be structured. And I do a lot of the development work.
Great,
But
great,
yeah, that's sort of how it came about.
great. Antonio.
I began with DAOs, working with ecosystems, and I'm always has been a restless guy. So corporations tend to not like me, guys like me. So I always try new things and multiple interests. So when starting with network
Are you
organizations,
unmuting yourself? Let me see.
and it starts to interest me, and how could we help more people get into that? And here in Brazil, we have several locations that people have lower opportunities, have lower income, and we start to think how can we help them organize themselves using the internet to produce something on a distributed way. So from 2008 to now, we are working on this methodology and experimenting. We worked with collaborative spaces. We worked with network enterprises. We start our own cryptocurrency experiments, and then we build up this theory. For us, DAO was the result of our work, and then we are talking with Michael Casey from the Age of Cryptocurrencies, who is now working with Coindesk. And he said, wow, you have a true DAO on your hands. And we didn't even know what the concept was. So we kind of find ourselves in it,
Yeah, yeah.
And that's what drives me. And that's what enthusiasms me on this, because we're bringing prosperity for the people who are coming in it. So that's it.
Great, great. Bill, you're a law graduate. How did you get into the politics sector, and what made you get in there?
Yeah, so prior to going to law school, I'd worked in politics in the US, mostly at the federal level. I went to law school because my passion was really kind of technology and law. And I think my final year in law school, the Ethereum white paper was published, and I read that. And that was the first time that blockchain really appealed to me, because I thought, wow, this is solving a problem. This could solve problems that I care about, unlike Bitcoin, which I felt like was just digital gold, and that's never been super interesting. So I worked a couple of years as a corporate lawyer, where governance is also an important aspect of what we do. Corporate governance is probably worse and more broken than US politics in a lot of ways. And eventually I found some other people that had a similar mindset around using blockchain to really experiment and innovate in governance systems. And that's when we started building Peeps, focusing initially on social movements and political organizations, because they are kind of grassroots and emergent by nature. They're an easier target than corporations and startups that have a lot more reasons to resist movement to a DAO structure. And that's kind of my origin stories of how I went from a law student and then corporate lawyer in a glass tower in Manhattan to now somebody building DAOs and writing smart contracts.
Fantastic. So you program, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, fantastic. Well, okay. So
Misha, want to go ahead?
Yeah, I just wanted to ask one quite simple question, and please feel free to answer whoever is ready. And the question is, as I said, really simple. Would you take a plane that is operated by DAO on Ethereum blockchain?
No.
Why okay, let me seek into another question. I was reading history. I'm a fan of history, and Rome had republic because they didn't want a person to get all the power. So during emergency, they initiated something called senatus consultum ultimum. That means they give dictatorial powers to one person for 6 months, right? So because they want to do this with the speed, right, to protect the republic. Do you think DAO is going to have something like that, in case of emergency? Because I was reading, MakerDAO had problems they had. So do you think they're going to have like this? If yes, don't you think it is more of a centralized, management layer? Yeah.
Yeah, so I'll jump in quickly first. I think a lot of DAOs start with dictators, just like in the Roman context. The nice thing about on-chain governance is that you can peacefully overthrow that dictator at any time. A lot of the DAO communities I'm in tend to have one or a small number of community people that really drive the agenda and do the work and are rewarded with additional shares for that. But the advantage of the DAO, unlike Rome, is that if they ever start doing a bad job, we can just reject their proposals and start following somebody else. In ancient Rome, that 6-month dictator thing worked pretty well until Julius Caesar decided to extend his term, and there was no on-chain vote for throwing him out.
Yeah, before there's Sulla, right? There was Sulla, the guy who abused the power. So that's a long story, but the long story short is we are just discovering a new way of coordination. I believe over the time we will, I guess, improve that. But our next question is to Antonio, because you have been experienced with many DAOs. Which sector do you think had really big success? It's a non-profit sector, engineering sector, and if yes, why was it success? Why did it gain traction?
Uh, I don't know exactly one sector who's have been more successful than the other. What we are experimenting here is there is one specific type of person who is more capable to work in a DAO because it's a change of culture and a change of mindset that are needed. We have experimented for 3 years, and I can tell you, as much as I have more than 100 people now with us, I have 200 people who just flown out of our office crying, because they say we cannot work on this environment. We cannot work on an environment which I have no power dictated by someone. I need the authority being given for someone superior. I need to receive orders. I need to be on a formal structure. So what we're talking about is people who wants to take things on their own hands, and they are seeing the problem up there and they say, well, I'm going to solve this. It's not a dictatorship because you do not have the power for a certain time. You have the power to solve that task. You are saying, I will lead this attack on this task. So for the next one, it doesn't need to be you. So what we have is the figure, what we say, the initiator, someone like Satoshi Nakamoto, which was our model, which was someone who wrote the first rules, the first set of rules. And when things start running smoothly, it just vanished. He's a node on the network that he had begun. So that's our principles. You cannot be a dictator, but you can be an initiator. You establish a certain set of rules, and these rules will be, the trick is you cannot set a specific type of rules just for your pleasure or your gain, because you will not attract anybody else to help you on that, and you'll be standing alone. So you have to look at the network, be empathic, and look at the people on the network and build rules to attend as much people that you can. So that's our principle on this, and we've been very successful on that.
Great. Misha, you have any question? Next question. Unleash Misha.
Okay. So my next question going to be is how feasible are DAOs in private and permissioned blockchain environments?
Oh, yeah. This is what I had also question in the enterprise sector. Yeah. Who's gonna go first?
Yeah, I'll go with that one. I think that's great. I think that there will be more and more demand for that. Absolutely. There's, privacy with blockchain is an area where there's a lot of research and analysis going on. Of course, everything is public, but they do have blockchains now, that private transaction managers, way to keep some information encrypted. But of course, the data that's encrypted can't be verified by other parties. So there's a trade-off. But they can certainly run it on a network, on a blockchain network that is a private blockchain network that is only visible on that organization's private network. And I think that's what I worked with a few of my clients in that manner. And I think that is probably the way they will do it. Although I've started to see more enterprises adopt public blockchains.
Any platform can you give example? Any platform you can give example? Like Hyperledger, I don't know, they don't have something for DAOs.
Right.
So
the one that this isn't so much for DAOs, it's just more for enterprises using public blockchains. There's a new protocol called Baseline Protocol that is developed by, I think like Ernst & Young or one of the big consulting firms as a partnership with the Ethereum Enterprise Foundation. And it's for enterprises to share documents and come to consensus on public network, but it's really not associated with any DAOs. All the DAOs that I've worked with, all the data is fully public.
Okay, so great. We have almost less than 10 minutes, but I want to ask a question to Bill. I guess anybody is open, but it's more DAO politics. Would we see DAO being used in parliamentary session in Capitol Hill? I heard, I mean, Bill, you mentioned that it's still not really developed yet. It's work in progress. But do you see that, you know, over time, they're going to adopt this, or there's going to be resistance to use DAOs? And second part question is that, do you think the polls, you know, approval ratings poll is going to be outdated? And you can use DAOs to take the votes, take back the votes real time, and you could see in real time with better accuracy whether the candidate has good approval ratings or not. You know, so yeah.
So I think, you know, it would make sense to have DAOs at the legislative level to replace their like weird system of green, red, light voting, just because then you would automatically have all the votes public. You could program in the release of funds associated with those votes to reduce overhead. The reason I think it would start with a legislator first is because you don't have to worry so much about identity. You kind of know the 500 so people in Congress, you give each of them a wallet or a private key, they vote, etc. And it wouldn't change that much because now all of their votes are published in public. It would just be automated and stored on the blockchain, which would be slightly more secure. The challenge is that most of Congress doesn't understand what blockchain is and is on the older anti-tech side. So we'll see if some state legislator adopts it just to reduce administrative costs. In terms of kind of approval polls and polling and general election stuff through DAOs, I think that gets to the problem of identity, which is a really complicated problem that we haven't solved well in the context of truly decentralized systems. Because once you start kind of voting on the blockchain or have a DAO that controls a city or state budget, you really want to know, for instance, if I'm controlling the budget for my local town or have a vote on it, that I am who I say I am, I'm a single person, that I actually live in the town still. And there are a bunch of things around that I think we'll get there on the identity front. But until we can easily program in identity to DAOs, we're probably going to see kind of elections and polling take place in traditional fashions.
Fantastic. Misha, we want to go next question. Yeah, unmute yourself.
Yeah. So sorry, guys.
Yeah.
Yeah, probably the another question that I would ask, it's quite simple. What are some insights that work with DAO give you that could be used to change how we work in traditional organizations?
Well, the most insight that we have is the commitment of the workers or the people to the organization will increase with the autonomy that the distributed or even the decentralized methodologies will give. So people feel more empowered, not because someone is saying that I will give you the power, but they have this full notion that they are doing that because the company or the organization will encourage that. So when you give them autonomy, you will see the commitment and the agility and the productivity grows. Goes on the opposite direction what the industrial model of corporation does, which is reduce the autonomy and create any more lots of indicators and numbers that will measure productivity withdrawing the autonomy of the employee. So that's what we experience on this.
Fantastic. One question I have is DAO and AI. This is very, very mostly talked about DAO and artificial intelligence. You know, if it's a good marriage or a bad marriage. If yes, it's a good marriage. Give me an example. Who wants to go first? DAO and AI.
We are working with AI. We are using AI to analyze the information, the interaction, and the financial fluxes, and to show the network for our participants. And when they see the network and they can see themselves on the network, they will perform better. But we do not use AI to replace people or replace processes that need
the question is for example, a bad AI. This, for example, you made a bot for, shares, for making profit in a stock market, right? So its only job is to make profit, and tomorrow it just collects the money and puts in the bank. So tomorrow you want to shut it down, this DAO. Tomorrow the government wants to shut down, a DAO which is illegal, like hacking or something. So how would they go about shutting a DAO down? So this is like futuristic. I mean, but
you cannot.
Outside of DAO?
No, you cannot shut down. Those are the most resilient structures that you have. A distributed topology is more resilient of anything that you put on against it. That's the problem. That's the problem.
So we've been talking about humans DAO, but there's an AI DAO. All managing machines. For example, Uber have been working on autonomous vehicles, and tomorrow they can fire up the middle management. Because all I have to do is accounting, audit, and all this thing. You can just program it in the blockchain, and you just have to program, the car, have IoT, Internet of Things. If anything breaks down, it goes to garage. The management, costs will fall down. So do you think this is going to happen very soon, where you have Uber on a DAO?
I think, right, DAOs are kind of the anti-AI in some ways. So a DAO is people coordinating resources and assets. I do think, almost to Misha's earlier question about would you fly on a DAO controlled plane? Of course not, but I would fly on a plane that was owned by a DAO and maybe used some sort of AI to fly itself. That's perfectly fine. And that's kind of nice because I could, in theory, see that the DAO maintains its planes in a certain way and hires certain types of pilots versus I have no clue what like American Airlines actually does. With respect to DAOs and AI, I can imagine DAOs owning AI, DAOs owning people's data and then selling that data to AI, and then the DAO receiving funds and distributing it to the members. So I think there is some sort of marriage to be had, kind of like Carlos was talking about, but it's going to be using AI to look at the data within a DAO, having DAOs control data and resources that are maybe processed through AI or use AI. I don't see the benefit in having like an AI run DAO because like why do you need several machines to make coordinated decisions?
Okay.
Love you, man. I loved you. That's exactly what I'm gonna say.
Fantastic. You just have 4 minutes, couple of minutes. So what are the business models you saw that worked for DAO other than DeFi? I know MakerDAO and all that. Other than DeFi, what is working? Which business models are working? Which sectors are working in the DAO? Can you give me an example?
Yeah, I can give you a quick example. This is a very small one, but I started a legacy style investment club buying, stocks and bonds, and we're operated via a DAO, where everyone contributes different amounts, whatever they're comfortable with, but then the decision of the purchases are all made through allocation of the voting power.
Bill, you want to add something?
Yeah, I think kind of the two use cases we've seen really successful thus far are grants-based DAOs, which kind of replace nonprofits and rely on donations. And then what Max was talking about, investment DAOs, where people put money in, make collective investment decisions, and then
It'd be great for microfinance, microfinance like Kiva and all those. Yeah, fantastic. Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
Well,
Yeah. I mean, we'll see other emerging DAO business models. I think I'd watch DAO House for anybody that's interested. I'm involved there. They're really like the first product DAO. There's also a DAO called Raid Guild, which is an engineering cooperative DAO. So we're at the beginning of this amazing journey, and we're going to see a lot of cool stuff be DAOified.
Great. So Misha, you have one last question. Unleash Misha.
Okay, the last question. How you guys will consider, what going to be your response, I would say, if somebody will compare DAO to the movie I, Robot?
Which movie?
iRobot.
iRobot.
iRobot is the,
Oh.
I don't know, what's the name?
Where the artificial intelligence becomes sovereign.
Try to take a control of the society.
Yeah.
I think it's a very low risk. I hear this a lot though. A lot of people are concerned about it. It's autonomous, and it actually led for this one group I was working with to sort of rename it to be a human organization. But the autonomy in DAO wasn't meant to be the same artificial intelligence, meaning we don't use humans. It's more of we don't need a legal framework. It's autonomous from any state-controlled, centralized party. So I don't think it's a great comparison, although, 20 years from now, I'm sure we will have DAOs where the members are robots. And, but I don't see it as it doesn't keep me up at night, so to speak.
Fantastic. Thank you, the guests, for having us, for coming and attending this. One of my guests is asking if you can provide the presentations. Are you okay with it? If you can mail me, I would email everybody so they could get to know your projects. So before you go, I would like to show something about the next event we're going to have. We're going to have a special guest coming from Central Bank Digital Currency. That's on August 31st. So feel free to attend. And if you have any questions and concern, feedback, please email us. And thanks, guests. Thanks, Misha, for attending. And thanks, the audience, for your presence. We'll send you the video. And also, if you have any questions, feedback, please let us know.
Yep. Thank you. It's great being here.
Thanks. Bye.
Thank you.
so much.
Nice to meet you.
Guys.
Bye-bye.
Bye.